What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. Happy hump day to you and yours. Let's start with some good news. Talked about Dante Scarnecchia and the possibility that he could be joining this staff in some kind of role. Greg Bedard wrote about this over the past few days. We talked about it, wondering what kind of role it would be, part-time, full-time, advisor, what was going to be happening. Well, I can tell you that it has been confirmed. It has been confirmed that Dante Scarnecchia is in fact helping out this coaching staff at the facility. It's already happening. Bill O'Brien on his podcast, his most recent podcast, came out and told all of us that Dante Scarnecchia has already met with Doug Marrone a few times. He is back as an advisor. So it's not going to be a full-time role. I guess he's going to pop in from time to time. But as we talked about on the podcast earlier this week, any Dante is good Dante. I'd rather have some Dante than no Dante. So the fact that Dante Scarnecchia is in fact going to help this coaching staff, he is going to be there bouncing things off Marrone bouncing things off him. I talked about maybe he could help with the scouting part of it, right? Looking at tape of young offensive linemen. So this, to me, is a very, very good thing. Dante Scarnecchia is absolutely 100% back in the fold, according to Bill O'Brien, already working with Doug Marrone. So fantastic to hear that Scar is going to be an advisor for the offensive line and help this coaching staff. Absolutely tremendous to hear. Another hiring has been known now over the past couple of hours or so, and that is outside linebackers coach Mike Smith. So apparently Mike Reese tweeted out just a little while ago that Mike Smith will be the team's offensive outside linebackers coach. Sorry, thinking offense, seeing, he'll be the outside linebackers coach. He recently coached outside linebackers with Green Bay in 2019 to 2021. He also coached outside linebackers with Minnesota in 22 and 23. And he also, aside from coaching outside linebackers with the Vikings in 22 and 23, he was also Minnesota's pass rush specialist those two seasons. So a couple of little tidbits coaching-wise. Dante Scarnecchia is officially an advisor, according to Bill O'Brien, helping out the offensive line, helping out Doug Marrone, helping out Jason Hotaling, and Mike Smith has been added to the defensive staff as the outside linebackers coach. All right, let's get to Myles Garrett. I want to talk about Myles Garrett. I want to talk about Cooper Kupp. Both guys want out or are going to be traded. We found this out over the past 24 to 36 hours. We start with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett came out with a public trade request. We all know that Garrett's a stud. Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. He had 14 sacks this season. He is a four-time first-team All-Pro. Myles Garrett is one of the best defensive players in football. Hands down, period, end of sentence. There is no doubting that. He's one of the most impactful, one of the most talented defensive players in the NFL. So first, he's a stud. And apparently, he wants out of Cleveland. So whenever a stud is on the market, you've got to start looking at the possibility of acquiring him if you're the Patriots, because this Patriots team, as we know, is full of holes on this roster. They need a bunch. They need a bunch to get right here this offseason. So when you look at the fact that, A, he's a stud, and then B, he plays a position of need. We all know the Patriots need a pass rusher. They need an edge. They need a couple of edges. Anthony Jennings did a good job defending the run last year, does a very good job at making sure that he contains all of that stuff. But this is going to be a different defense with Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams. This is going to be a more attacking defense. Vrabel, Williams, those guys like their defensive ends to get downfield, get after the quarterback. This is going to be a much more aggressive system if they play the same way they played with the Tennessee Titans going back the few years Vrabel was there. So this is going to be a more aggressive defense. I don't think that Anthony Jennings necessarily fits this defense nearly as well as he fit Belichick's defense and Covington's defense. This is going to be different. So not only do you need an edge, but pass rush at defensive end is much more significant within this new system that we anticipate happening than it has been in the past several years. So he's a stud. and he's a defensive end. He's a defensive end that gets after the quarterback. I would say that edge is a top 3 Patriots need. You look at tackle. Tackle is obviously a big-time need. Wide receiver 1 is obviously a big-time need. But I would put defensive end right there behind tackle and wide receiver. They're desperate. They're desperate for help on the edge. And we can't overlook the fact that Garrett obviously has played his entire NFL career in Cleveland. And, of course, Mike Vrabel was in Cleveland last year, so you have that connection. Vrabel was there. He obviously knows a lot about Myles Garrett. And so does that connection bring us to this idea that the Patriots could actually be in on Myles Garrett? And should they be in on Myles Garrett? Should the Patriots pursue Garrett? That's my question to you. Do you want the Patriots to pick up the phone, call Cleveland, and ask the Browns what it would take to bring Myles Garrett to Gillette Stadium? Do you want that to happen? The $1 million question for me is, how much would it cost? How much do you have to give up to acquire Garrett? That's the $1 million question here. I think all of us would be interested in Myles Garrett, the football player. Maybe some of you wouldn't be, but I'd have to imagine the vast majority would say, hell yeah, sign me up. Myles Garrett, defensive end, one of the best defensive players in football. Absolutely, I'm interested. I would have to imagine that the vast majority of you would feel that way. But how much would it cost? Jeff Howe, friend of the podcast, wrote about this at The Athletic. The Athletic polled 10 NFL personnel executives and coaches to get a feel for Garrett's trade market. All believed the Browns could recoup a first-round pick, with most estimating there'd be at least a player or mid-round pick added to the package. 3 sources thought the Browns would land at least a pair of first-round picks. Here's what a executive said to Jeff Howe. Quote, "The only sticking point is the age. Are you trading multiple first-rounders for a defensive player of the year type close to hitting 30? It's debatable, but Myles is so damn good," unquote. Howe writes, if traded without a restructure, the new team would owe Garrett an incredibly affordable $44.8 million over the next 2 seasons. That money would not be guaranteed, though, so there'd be an expectation for an adjustment at the bare minimum. So when I look at this, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, I would trade the 4th pick in the draft for Myles Garrett. I would trade the 4th pick overall for Garrett, and I would also swap mid-round picks in this year's draft. But that's my limit. So let's say you give up the 4th pick. You give up the 4th pick. You give up a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick, and then Cleveland sends you Myles Garrett and a 5th or 6th-round pick. I'd be okay with that trade. And I know the cost. I get it. The 4th pick overall is something that everybody wants to talk about. Everybody's in love with the idea of, oh, you can get Travis Hunter and maybe you can get Abdul Carter. Maybe you don't get either of those guys. Maybe those guys are picked in the top 3. So my limit, I'd be willing to trade for Garrett, but my limit is the 4th pick in the draft and then swap mid-round picks in this draft. That's what I would do. I'll give you 4 and a 3rd-round pick for Garrett and a 4th-round pick. That's what I would do. I wouldn't go beyond that. I would not be trading multiple first-round picks. I would not be trading the 1st-round pick and a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft. I would not be willing to go that far. I just wouldn't. I would not go that far for Garrett, as good of a football player as he is. Now, he's going to be 30, but he's going to be 30 in December. So, essentially, you're getting Myles Garrett at age 29, right? He's going to be 29 years old through 3/4 of the season. So he's not turning 30 in a month. He's not turning 30 in 2 months. He's going to be 29 for the vast majority of this season. So I do think it's a little bit different when people talk about, oh, Myles Garrett, he's 30 years old. And I know you might sit there and say, Nick, it's only 1 year. What the hell is the difference? There's a big difference. If he turns 30 in June versus turning 30 on December 29th, which, by the way, is his birthday, I mean, he just turned 29 a month and a half ago. So you've got almost a full year of age 29. So age 29, 30, 31, 32, you're now talking 4 years of football, and he would be 32 years old at the end of that season. So I know people talk about him being 30 and people feel like that's old. I don't think Myles Garrett is an old man. All right, before I continue my thoughts on Myles Garrett, do me a favor here. Don't forget, click that thumbs up as you watch this channel. You watch the video, you listen to the podcast. Click that thumbs up, helps us with the algorithm. Takes a second of your time, doesn't cost you any money. So click that thumbs up. Also throw a comment in. What would you be willing to give? What would you be willing to give for Myles Garrett if you were the Patriots? Would you want to trade for Myles Garrett, or are you completely out? You might be completely out. You might say, Nick, thanks, but no thanks. I'm completely out on this idea. And I get it. It's debatable. It is certainly debatable. It's not an easy call with where this roster is. So don't forget to click that thumbs up. Don't forget to throw a comment in, yes or no on Garrett, yes or no on Cooper Kupp, who we'll get to in a couple minutes. And also don't forget to subscribe. We're 200 subscribers away from our goal of 6,000 subscribers. We're trying to hit that goal by free agency, which, of course, is early March 10th. The tampering period begins, whatever they call it. So we're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers. We are 200 away from that. So don't forget to click that thumbs up. Don't forget to click the notify bell as well and subscribe and comment. All of those things help us out here at the podcast, helps us build the community, helps us drive that algorithm. Spotify, Apple Pods, I see you, I hear you as well. Rate and review at those spots. All right, back to Myles Garrett. You are in the middle of a rebuild. We all understand that, right? So I don't think you're in a position to deal a slew of draft picks. I don't think you're in the position to give up 2 or 3 top draft assets, right? That's why I'm not trading anything beyond the 4th pick that would be seen as a high-quality draft asset. I'm not giving you any additional 1s. I'm not giving you any 2s. And if I'm going to give you a 3, I want a 4th back. If I'm giving you a 4th, I want a 5th back. Because the 4th pick in the draft is worth its weight in gold. And if you can get a better deal from somebody else, have at it. Go right ahead. Maybe a team that is contending is willing to give you 2 first-round picks, but those first-round picks are going to be somewhere in the 20s, if not the 30s. So you have to make that call if you're the Cleveland Browns. Are you willing to take the 28th pick this year and next year's 30th pick, or are you willing to take the 4th pick overall in this draft and a mid-round pick that you swap? Because, of course, Cleveland is sitting at number 2. If you're Cleveland, if you trade with the Patriots, that means you have 2. You have 2 top 5 picks, which means you could draft Abdul Carter at number 2 and then come back at number 4 and get a quarterback. So that's all I'm offering. I'm not giving you multiple top assets. No way. My roster is not ready. It's not prepared to deal with that. My roster can deal with you're getting Myles Garrett for the 4th pick because that's who you're essentially drafting. But when you've got as many holes as this team has, I'm not in the position to deal multiple top flight draft assets. So why am I willing to give up the 4th pick? I'll tell you why I'm willing to give up the 4th pick. If you trade for Myles Garrett, I believe you're going to get 3 to 5 years of top end play, 3 to 5 years of generational play. And as much as we love all of these draft picks, and as much as we love talking about the guys that might fall to 4, might be sitting there at 4 for you, as much as we talk about it, inevitably it's an unknown. We have no idea who's going to be sitting there at 4. If I asked you, would you rather have Myles Garrett or Will Campbell? That's really what you're looking at. That would be a safe comp because you feel really good about Will Campbell being there at 4. So would you take Myles Garrett over Will Campbell? Because Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, they could easily be gone within the top 2 or 3. So do you take the known? Last year, or 2023's, last year's Defensive Player of the Year, not last year's in 2024, but 2023's Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who is seen as one of the top 3 defensive players in all of football. Would you rather have that guy guaranteed on your roster or cross your fingers that somebody's going to fall to you at number 4, or you make the right pick at number 4. I'm taking Garrett. I'm taking the generational player. I'm not telling you he'll be great for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but I do believe at 29 years old, he's got 3 to 5 really good years left to his football career. I could absolutely see him playing until he's 32, 33 at a top level. Guy's in tremendous shape. He's also only missed 2 games in the last 4 years. And a lot of those games, a lot of those years, you look at the Browns, they're not a good football team. Obviously, they made the playoffs in 2023. It was a fantastic year, 5 different quarterbacks. We talked all about it when the Patriots hired Alex Van Pelt. But the Cleveland Browns have not been a good football team for most of their existence. And Myles Garrett missed 2 games in the last 4 years. He's a guy that plays football, loves playing football, highly competitive. That's why he wants out of Cleveland. Myles Garrett single-handedly changes your defense, folks. He changes your defense day one. He's everything and then some that you hope Abdul Carter will be when he eventually gets to the league and figures things out. Myles Garrett is already that guy times I don't know how much on day one. I mean, imagine if you trade for Myles Garrett and you sign one of the defensive ends that are in free agency, because defensive end is actually pretty deep in free agency, not with top-tier talent like somebody like Garrett. But imagine if you trade for Garrett, you sign one of the top 4 or 5 defensive ends that will be out there in free agency, and you have Christian Barmore, hopefully, fingers crossed, coming back from the blood clots, and you've got Christian Gonzalez. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Gonzalez, Barmore, and Garrett. Those are 3 blue-chip, dominant players at the NFL level on your defense. 3 out of the 11 guys on that field can dominate at any moment. That's taking a step. That's taking a big step in the right direction. Myles Garrett also changes the perception and reputation of your program immediately. You took a step forward in the right direction hiring Mike Vrabel. You took a step offensively hiring Josh McDaniels. You are trying to repair the image. You are trying to get players that are out there who are going to be free agents. You want them to look at this roster. You want them to look at this football team and believe that this team is going to take that step. If you bring in somebody like Myles Garrett, you give up the 4th pick in the draft for Myles Garrett, that tells everybody in the NFL, players, agents, everybody, that you want this program to be serious. And you are focused on being a competitive football team, and within the next year or 2, being a contending football team. A Myles Garrett walking into the room, having that press conference, makes it much easier for you to sell other free agents that you're looking at that you might think you don't have a shot at right now because of the current roster. It gives you a much better chance at those other guys walking into that room and selling them on your vision. Hey, we just traded for Myles Garrett. We're serious about turning this thing around. Come join us. It's an easier pitch. And you have the money. You have the money to restructure Garrett's deal, and you have the money to add more free agent pieces. It's not like if you acquire Myles Garrett, that's it, you're done, your offseason is over. You're not going to spend any money on anybody else. You've got over $100 million in cap space. And with Garrett's current contract having not much guarantees in the deal, if you go back to what has been written, Garrett affordable, $44.8 million over the next 2 seasons, but that money is not guaranteed. So the door is open for you to extend Garrett, get him some money up front, but also deal with the finances of his contract in a way that it won't absolutely cripple you moving forward. So you have plenty of cap space to still go out there and get people. It's not like Myles Garrett's the only guy. That's it, right? It's not like, oh, we traded for Myles Garrett, we're good. We're going to keep all the rest of the money. All right. So let's move on to Cooper Kupp. That's how I feel about Garrett. How about Cooper Kupp? You in or out on Cooper Kupp? because Cooper Kupp went to social media and said that the Rams are looking to trade him. The first person I would go to right now at that facility, it's 10, 15 minutes away from me, Gillette Stadium. The first person that I would go to talk about Cooper Kupp is Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown's on your staff, tight ends coach, pass game coordinator. Thomas Brown, of course, was with the Rams 2020, 2021, and 2022. Former assistant head coach / tight ends coach, former assistant head coach / running backs coach. Thomas Brown, your passing game coordinator now in 2025, obviously has firsthand knowledge of Cooper Kupp, how the guy ticks. Is he a leader in the locker room, right? What kind of presence does he have? What kind of presence in that locker room does he bring with him? So I would go to Thomas Brown immediately, and I would get all the intel on Cooper Kupp that I could get from Thomas Brown. Cooper Kupp had his best year when Thomas Brown was with the Rams. Now, of course, Brown was not, the passing game coordinator. He wasn't the wide receivers coach, but he worked with the offense, and he was the assistant head coach. So Brown should have some big-time information on Cooper Kupp and how he goes about his business. So I would bring in Thomas Brown and ask him as many questions as I could. I would be in on Kupp. I'd be in on Kupp. But as Ted DiBiase always said, everybody has a price, right? I can't quite laugh like the $1 Million Man, but everybody has a price. So again, my question is the $1 million question. What would it cost to trade for Cooper Kupp? I would not give up more than a 4th-round pick for Kupp. If it's going to cost a 3rd, I'm out. Trade him to somebody else. I have absolutely zero interest in trading a 2nd-round pick, 3rd-round pick for Cooper Kupp. No shot. 4th-round pick, yes. I'd make that deal. I'd make that deal for Cooper Kupp. A 4th-round pick, absolutely. 4th-round picks are hard to hit on for any GM, right? The likelihood of hitting on a 4th-round pick is not necessarily great. I know Cooper Kupp is going to be 32 years old in June. I know if you acquire Cooper Kupp, he's likely going to get you, 12 games, right? That's been what he has been for the last 3-4 years. He's going to get you 12, 13 games. I understand that. I'm not telling you Cooper Kupp is perfect. But what I'm telling you is that wide receiver room at Gillette needs multiple pieces. You need multiple wide receivers this offseason. And so if the price is right, and to me that is a 4th-round pick, if the price is right, I would be willing to give up a 4th-round pick for Cooper Kupp, even though he's going to be 32 in 4 months, even though he's probably going to play 12 games for me in 2025, I would be willing to give up that 4th-round pick. Now, what's interesting, I think you could also work on Kupp's contract so you don't have to necessarily assume the contract that he has. I think you could work around that. I don't think it's 100% necessary that you have to, assume the contract that Kupp is currently on. And Joel Corey, former agent, wrote about this, said Rams have a history of paying money to wide receivers to facilitate trades. Robert Woods' $3.5 million roster bonus was paid before his 2022 trade to the Titans. Allen Robinson's $5.25 million roster bonus was paid, and $5 million of 2023's base salary was converted to signing bonus before his 2023 trade to the Steelers. So the Rams, they have a history of paying somebody's contract, their bonuses, right? They have a history of paying those roster bonuses to trade the player. And that opens the door for you to work out a different deal, which I'll get to later. I don't think that you have to pay his roster bonus. I don't think you have to pay Cooper Kupp a ton of money. And if the Rams want you to assume the entire contract, I would go back to LA and say, hey, we'll pay him the roster bonus, but now we got to swap picks. If you want me to pay Cooper Kupp's roster bonus, I'll trade you a 5th for Cooper and a 4th. That's how I would work it. And we have to understand, every time I do this podcast, I try to explain context matters, right? I'm not bringing Cooper Kupp in here because I think Cooper Kupp is a number 1 wide receiver, folks. I don't think Cooper Kupp's going to catch you 110 footballs for 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'm not bringing Cooper Kupp in here to be that guy. I'm bringing Cooper Kupp in here to be my third wide receiver, best case scenario, maybe second receiver, depending on what else you do. If you go out and you sign a T. Higgins, for example, then Cooper Kupp is your second guy, your third guy. Depends on what else happens this offseason. Who do you get in the draft? Is there another trade that we don't know about? But I'm not going into this planning on Kupp being somebody who's going to be a top receiver. I'm just not. I try to have realistic expectations. I do think he could be a 3 receiver. I think he could be a 2B if he could stay healthy. If he gives you 12 to 13 games, I still think Cooper Kupp is a second/3, third receiver in the NFL. And right now, again, y'all can't sit there and act like the Patriots have the wide receiver room figured out. Beggars can't be choosers. You ever hear that growing up? I heard that a lot growing up. Beggars can't be choosers. We've been begging for dependable, good wide receivers on this football team for multiple years now. And if you have a chance to get Cooper Kupp, yes, 32 in June. Yes, wear and tear. Yes, going to play probably 10 to 12 games for you. I understand all of that. That's why you get him for a 4th-round pick. You're not trading a 3rd-round pick or a 2nd-round pick for the guy. You're trading a 4th-round pick. Maybe you can even get him for a 5th-round pick. If you can pay the roster bonus, maybe you get him for a 5th. But if you acquire Cooper Kupp, if you traded for him 5 minutes from now, Cooper Kupp is arguably your best wide receiver in that room right now, folks. So don't be looking down on Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? You got Kayshon Boutte in that wide receiver room right now. You got Javon Baker, who couldn't get on the field. Jalen Polk, who was a bust his rookie season. And we're really going to sit here and nitpick Cooper Kupp? You can do it. I ain't going to do it. I've watched that wide receiver room the last couple years. Even if Cooper Kupp plays 12 games for you and catches 50 footballs, 60 footballs, I'll take it. I'll take that production versus the other guys in that room right now that would be 2 or 3 wide receiver. You can disagree. It's cool. We can agree to disagree. I'm just looking at that room, and I don't think it's a bad thing to bring somebody in who brings veteran leadership and can give you a dependable veteran when he's out there for Drake May. I know he's not Cooper Kupp from 2021. I know he's not Cooper Kupp from 2022. But a nice veteran leader, dependable guy who can go out there and catch 50 footballs. If you need him to catch 50 footballs, 60 footballs. And here's the other thing we got to remember. Cooper Kupp is going to be working with Josh McDaniels. He ain't working with Matt Patricia. He ain't working with, Alex Van Pelt, with all due respect. Bill O'Brien obviously had a rough year in 2023 as well. He's not working with Tyler Hughes. He's working with Josh McDaniels and this offensive staff, and I trust that Josh McDaniels will get the most out of Cooper Kupp. I believe that you can scheme him open. I know he's not as fast as he used to be. He doesn't have the lower body quickness. I know he doesn't separate as often as he used to. But I think McDaniels can scheme him. And what is it going to cost you? To me, it's a low-risk, high-reward type move. We're talking about a 4th-round pick, folks. A 4th-round pick. You want to sit there and clutch a 4th-round pick and not trade for somebody who is a legitimate NFL receiver, even if he is not the same guy he was 2 or 3 years ago? You want to hold on to that 4th-round pick like it's like your life depends on it? You can do it. I'm not going to do it. And I also think, again, I said this a little bit earlier, I think you could lock up Cooper Kupp on a short-term deal, not on big money. As a matter of fact, Spotrac posted this. Any team looking to acquire Cooper Kupp will almost certainly be renegotiating his current contract. And here's what Spotrac wrote. The 31-year-old carries a 2-year, $22 million valuation. So Spotrac says that Cooper Kupp is worth 2 years, $22 million. So $11 million a year. And here's how they wrote it. If the Patriots gave Cooper Kupp a contract like that, and they gave him a $10 million signing bonus, and they tacked on 3 void years at the end of the deal, the cap hit would be $3.2 million in 2025. So what I'm telling you is you can get Cooper Kupp for a 4th-round pick and drop his money down, and it's not going to handcuff you at all on the books. At worst, he's your 3rd receiver, folks. There's no guarantee that you can draft somebody in the 4th round that's going to be your 3rd receiver on day 1. We just found that out last year with Javon Baker. I'd be willing to give up a 4th-round pick for a guy who I feel will absolutely be at least your 3rd receiver in that room. I mean, we're talking peanuts on the cap if you work his deal out. Peanuts. All right, I got one more thing I want to talk about. Offensive tackles. Some of the things that we, found out in Mobile. We haven't gotten to that just yet. Some reports about Will Campbell. I want to get to that in a couple minutes. Don't forget to help us out. Like, comment, and subscribe as always. Again, click that thumbs up. Helps us with the algorithm. Throw a comment in. Are you in or out on Cooper Kupp? If it costs you a 4th-round pick, I'm in. So click that thumbs up. Throw a comment in. And also subscribe. We're 200 subscribers away from hitting our 6,000 subscriber goal. Want to hit that before NFL free agency kicks off. Let's run through some super chats quick. Hamza, $5 super chat. Thank you. Pat should keep the 4th-round pick in their future picks. So Hamza, he says, or she says, nah, I'm keeping all my picks. I'm going to keep all of my picks. I'm like Danny Ainge. I'm hoarding all of my picks. Give me all the picks. Yum, 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 yum. Give me all the picks. Give me all the 4th-round picks I can get. So Hamza does not want to deal a 4th-round pick for a vet. Robin Fish, $5 super chat. Thank you for the 5, Rob. What about trading for Evan Neal for a late pick? Yeah, he's interesting, right? He was a top pick by the Giants going back a few years from Alabama. A lot of people thought that he was going to be pretty damn good. He has not been good. He has struggled, and at times he has struggled mightily, but he's still young. If you believe, this goes to like the Dante Scarnecchia, Doug Marrone thing, right? Like if Dante Scarnecchia is sitting in the room and he's with Doug Marrone and they watch tape of Evan Neal and they say, we think this guy could be decent for us. I don't think anybody would trade for Evan Neal thinking that he's going to be a guaranteed starter. But if you wanted to take a flyer and give up like a 5th or a 6th, I'd be in on that. David Colburn, super chat, $5 super chat. Thank you, David. Kupp would be a role model with major upside, but Nick, would Garrett want to come here? Yeah, it's the obvious question, right? I mean, I'm looking at it from the Patriots' point of view. I'm not sold that Garrett would want to be here. He wants to leave Cleveland so he can be on a contender. He's sick of losing. Does he want to join a team that just won 4 games in back-to-back seasons? I don't know. I would say probably not. I find it very unlikely. Look, I find it very unlikely the Patriots will trade for Garrett. I find it very unlikely that Garrett would want to play for the Patriots. But what is the relationship with Vrabel going back to Cleveland? If they give him enough money and they sell him on a vision, maybe you got a shot. But I don't think it's likely. Josh Gemini, I don't know what SEK means. I should. SEK 50. Thank you, Josh. Let's trade that 4th/5th for Jacoby Myers, underrated in Vegas. Mac loved him. May might too. Look, if you told me you can get Jacoby Myers for a 4th or 5th round pick, I'd do it every single day. But let's not forget, Tom Brady's out there in Vegas. And Tom Brady is well aware of Jacoby Myers. He's well aware of the Patriots connection. So I don't know if the Raiders would be wanting to give up Jacoby Myers. And if they did want to trade Jacoby Myers, I don't think it would take a 4th or a 5th. My guess is it would probably take a 3rd. But if you could get Jacoby Myers for a 4th or 5th round pick, yes, you do it every day of the week. I would absolutely trade for Myers if that was a possibility. If you could get that done, 100%. He knows McDaniel's offense. He's a dependable guy. I would take Myers over Kupp. But I don't know if Jacoby Myers would be available. I haven't seen anything saying he'd be available. I don't think the Raiders are dying to get rid of him. All right, let's look at some offensive tackle talk here. So Will Campbell is officially training as an offensive tackle. I know people will say, yeah, well, duh, Nick. He played offensive tackle. He played the left side for LSU. I'm aware, but there have been questions about whether or not Campbell is a tackle or he's a guard. He's training as a tackle, so he believes he's a tackle. The coaches that are working with him believe that he's a tackle. Now, the biggest question is the arm length. Is his arm length going to be 33 inches or is it going to be below 33 inches? That's the big talk of all the draft pundits. If Will Campbell's arms are 33 inches or longer, I think the vast majority of questions surrounding him, they go away. And I don't think anybody would kind of bat an eyelash at Will Campbell going in the top 5 to 8 of this draft if the arm length passes the test. But that's a big question. I will tell you that Campbell is growing on me. SEC offensive lineman, legitimate SEC tackle. His resume speaks for itself. He's been one of the best offensive linemen in college football. He was one of the best offensive linemen in college football this past year. He has leader mentality. Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network wrote this about Campbell. When guys at Alabama tell me that Campbell's the Will Anderson of offense, leadership, work ethic, and competitiveness, you should be excited. So there are people saying, hey, look, the guys at Alabama who have played against Will Campbell, they compare him to Will Anderson when it comes to leadership, work ethic, and competitiveness. I don't think you'll find anybody that would say a bad word about Will Campbell and his ability to want to go. Highly competitive dude. Highly competitive. And a leader in that locker room. So he's got the goods as far as makeup. Like Will Campbell, you could see him marrying perfectly with Drake May. If Will Campbell's your left tackle of the future, Drake May and Campbell have very similar approaches, very similar personalities as far as football goes. They're both highly competitive. They're both leaders. They both work their tail off. Now, is a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch of arm length a big deal? I don't think it is. I'm not passing on Will Campbell if his arms are like, 32 and, 6/8 or whatever the hell. If we're looking at somebody that has, 32 and 3/4 arm length, I'm not going to sit there and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa. I need another 1/4 of an inch. I'm not going to draft him. Like, I wouldn't go that far with the arm length thing. I just wouldn't. As far as Daniel Jeremiah, his top 50, here's what he wrote about Campbell. Some teams will be more concerned than others with Campbell's lack of length, but I don't see it as a major issue. He is just scratching the surface of his potential and should start at tackle for a decade, provided he stays healthy. So, according to what's going on with the arm length, Daniel Jeremiah, very respected draft pundit, says, I ain't worried about the arm length. I think if Will Campbell stays healthy, he'll be a starting tackle for a decade. So that makes me feel better. If Will Campbell gets evaluated as an offensive tackle, I think he's very difficult to pass up. I really do. Now, if you could trade down a couple of spots in a perfect world, the Raiders want, in a perfect world, there's a quarterback sitting there at number 4, and you trade back to 6. The Raiders move up to 4 to draft Shedeur Sanders, and then at 6, you end up drafting Will Campbell. That would be like the perfect world, the perfect scenario. But if you evaluate Will Campbell as a tackle, if Dante Scarnecchia and Doug Marrone are sitting in that room and they say, yeah, that guy's a tackle. If that's the case, it's very difficult to pass up Will Campbell, even at number 4. Because obviously we've all been sitting around for years waiting for the next left tackle. So if you buy the fact that he's a tackle, I don't think drafting Will Campbell is a bad idea. And he's growing on me more by the day. Another name to watch in the draft, not in the first round, is Ozzie Trapillo. 6'7", 321. He's got around 33.5-inch arms. He played at BC this past season. He's a tackle. He's got tackle size. Dane Brugler has called him one of the better day 2 offensive tackle prospects in this class. He has a history of playing right tackle and left tackle. And of course, Trapillo was, again, at BC last year, which means we know who was at BC last year, Doug Marrone. So how does Doug Marrone feel about Trapillo? Does he think he's a starting tackle in the NFL by year 2 or 3? That's somebody I would keep an eye on round 2, because you've got Doug Marrone's connection. Obviously, Bill O'Brien is very close friends with Mike Vrabel. Bill O'Brien knows about Trapillo. So you're going to have the book. You're going to have the book on Ozzie Trapillo. So as a second-round tackle prospect, I'd keep an eye on him. As far as other tackles, Evan Lazar wrote this about Mobile, the Senior Bowl week. Josh Connerly and Ariante Ursary were considered the 2 best offensive tackle prospects in Mobile, with some viewing them as a back half of the first-round target. Ohio State's Josh Simmons also in the mix as he recovers from a torn patellar tendon he suffered last October. Wyatt Millum from West Virginia and Gray Zabel from North Dakota State practiced exclusively on the interior at the Super Bowl, at the Senior Bowl. So that takes out 2 offensive tackle possibilities on day 2. It looks like Millum and Zabel are going to be guards. And Lazar wrote, the group is on the thinner side in terms of day 1 starters. He writes that his opinion of Connerly and Ursary was unchanged by what they did during the first 2 Senior Bowl practices. Both are late first, early second-round talents with starter upside, but might not be ready to step in on day 1 as blindside protectors. So remember, you're drafting a tackle after the first round. Even if you draft a tackle late in the first round, it is far from a guarantee that guy is going to be a starting tackle for you. Certainly far from, day 1. So let's not forget, it's not easy finding a starting tackle after you get past the first round. Teams do it. Of course they do it. Patriots have done it before. Not telling you it's impossible. I'm just telling you it's tough. Sleeper tackle prospects for the Patriots: Anthony Belton from NC State, Carson Vincent from Alabama A&M. Evan Lazar writes that Belton is a wide-body tackle who could stick outside, 6'5", 345 pounds. If you want a mauler at either tackle or guard, he's your guy. Meanwhile, Carson Vincent from Alabama A&M, smaller school, he showed out in Mobile. And, of course, when we talk about any of these drafts, right, any of these draft picks, and any of these possible guys, prospects that could be there for the Patriots, we also have to acknowledge that free agency will have a huge impact on what the Patriots do on draft weekend. If you draft, if you sign Ronnie Stanley or you sign Alaric Jackson, you sign one of these left tackles in free agency, well, now you don't have as much urgency to draft Will Campbell or a tackle in the first 2 rounds because you spent money on the tackle position. So free agency is going to absolutely impact the draft. If you go out and you sign T. Higgins, you're not going to touch Tet McMillan in the first round. Even if you drop down in the first round, you're not touching Tet McMillan if you sign T. Higgins. So every move impacts the next move. We can't forget that. Speaking of not forgetting, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Thumbs up on the YouTube channel. Of course, that helps us with the algorithm. So don't forget to click that thumbs up and like this podcast. Don't forget to throw your comments in. And don't forget to subscribe. We are 200 subscribers away from hitting our goal of 6,000 subscribers by free agency. So like, comment, subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, folks. Rate and review. You can also throw comments in as well. I appreciate every single one of you. Aside from big breaking news, we'll be back on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Crafts and Kickoffs. We'll talk Super Bowl and some other free agency stuff, some trade stuff. So should be fun. Drink a beer. We'll talk NFL tomorrow night at 7. Until then, be well and enjoy the rest of your hump day. Your Wednesday night. See ya.